The notion that I had from my World of Warcraft guild is when I was raiding with them, they would do, other than the obvious having a set start time, they also had a hard set end time, which is, even if we're excited and we're in the middle of stuff, we're going to stop no matter what. Even if we're on a roll, even if we're just there, we stop. And it's the same thing with the beginning. It's you come early or you're late, and it's always a certain time because everybody's got a life. So the exact same thing with having, for example, the incredible disappointment that is you being late. I'm not capable of working with that once we get going. Even if we were going to be working with something that's scripted and planned and could theoretically happen at any time, that's still a bad thing, because when you are able to set something, not necessarily in stone per se, but whenever you're able to create commitments, what that does is that creates opportunities around it. So even though it's a constraint to say, I will be available for a task between X and Y, what that does is it ripples around that time to let you know that you have these other times for other things, even if it's just to relax. And back to the gilding idea, and this leads back to the commercial break thing, and hopefully this will be something I can actually, this train of thought thing, hopefully I can keep doing it quite well. So the reason this harkens back to the story of the guild and the setup and end time is we would also internally have a clock running, and it happened to be a buff potion that we would all drink, and so it would have an elapsing timer for each person, but the person, the guild leader would use that as a counter, and it was a 1 hour buff. And what we did is we said that, well, at the end of that buff, we take a 10-minute break. And so what that is, that's even if we're on a roll, after 1 hour, you can know at the 45-minute mark when your break is coming up. You can know you can know tomorrow when you come and the day after when you come when your break is. You can know when you're playing when your break is. And you take a break, and the break is 10 minutes, which for raiding is actually it's unusual. It's quite unusual, because most of the time it's like go, and it's 5 hours of raiding, and you've got 5 minute. You've got breaks that last however long, whenever they happen. It's like, okay, we've been dying, guys. Let's just take a break. And then people kind of like leave and they come back whenever, and things like take a half an hour to pick back up or something. And that's an absolutely awful experience for everybody but those lazy bastards, right? Your lowest common denominator is forcing everybody else to act in a certain way. And that was a subtle way of saying you. But so instead of doing that, instead of like whenever, you have these predictable time slots of 1 hour, 10-minute break, 1 hour, 10-minute break, 1 hour, 10-minute break. And because that 10-minute break is knowable ahead of time at the start of things, you can be like, okay, well, I haven't had a snack, or I kind of need to use the bathroom, but you know exactly when, clocked, you will have that opportunity. So it's not torturous, the fact that you've got, you in the other room, you've got a cup of coffee that you forgot to bring, and it's going cold. You're like, okay, well, I know that I forgot it, but it's going to be there in 15 minutes, or it's going to be there. And that's something you can rely on. So that reliability is something that we can also stitch into this, which I've talked about before, which I talked about offline, I guess, for people listening. And that is when we can have prepared material. And that actually lets us go and take a bio break, go and eat or something. And that also lets listeners do the same thing, which I don't know if you've had that, oh, I'm on a roll, I'm just going to finish the rest of this podcast, and not know how long, like, you don't know if it's going to get really interesting in like, oh, well, another 15 minutes. This is even worse than being on a roll with you're watching a new series or something like that. And it's like, well, I like where the story arc is going, just one more episode. And you'd think, okay, well, I know the next episode is X amount of time. You're like trying to eat with your hair in the way. Ah, you're an animal. And I can't remember what I was talking. Fucking distractions. Yeah, anyhow, so it is something like watching TV when, theoretically speaking, you have the end of the episode, but you end up being pulled into, oh, just one more episode. A podcast doesn't even have that. It's like, this is a 2-hour thing, or this is a 3-hour thing. And there might be in there a moment when you're like, okay, they're changing topics. Okay, I can stop now, I guess, and hope they don't come back to it. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe we'd have the 10-minute break and just not come back to that topic. That's actually not a bad idea. But because that isn't knowable in these longer podcasts, it ends up being a real big problem for them as well as for the listener. Because the listener's like, okay, well, I can pause the podcast. If it's live, you can't do that, which is also a problem, right? So if this were to be live, like recorded live or something like that, then those knowable breaks would let somebody at work go and themselves go and do some work-related task away from their desk or away from their headphones or something. Would let them go and have a snack or let them, right? And it would also give us the ability to do the same thing. And because it's knowable, I mean, you can hold it for X amount of time, knowing that you will have, that we will all rest for 10 minutes. And you have 10 minutes. And maybe it would take a little bit of time to wind back up into the most engaging conversation after coming back from a break. But you at least know that you've got it, right? So I like this notion